Welcome everybody to this week's episode of the OG Ops podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Henderson. I'm joined by your co-host, Brandon Redlinger. Brandon?
As usual. Hey, how's it going?
You had to say the as usual because I didn't say it. It
Exactly,
really bothered you, didn't I? Always say it. And you have been Pavlovian conditioned to join me as usual. As usual. Well, good to see you again today, second time, NBD. But we are joined by Connor Jeffers, the CEO of Aptitude 8. Connor, do you want to give a little shout out to the audience?
Yeah, sure. What's up, everybody?
Not as usual.
not as usual. Brand new to the OG Ops podcast, but not brand new to the world of ops. So I guess counts as OG. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the low threshold for shipping. So we're all good.
Yeah, it's a very low threshold for shipping this episode out the door. So Connor, you founder and CEO, elite HubSpot partner. We were just shooting the shit about HubSpot because you love HubSpot. I love HubSpot as a marketing CRM, but the HubSpot marketing partnership marketplace is just blowing up. It's
everywhere, man. I run two businesses in the HubSpot ecosystem. So you have Aptitude 8, which I'll call A8. A8's a professional services organization. We do implementation, integration, optimization, all on HubSpot platform. So focused a lot on CRM platform stuff. We do a lot across all of the hubs and sort of either help companies build really cool stuff sort of with HubSpot as the core, or help people who are using HubSpot solve cool, exciting, interesting problems across the board. And then the secondary business is Happily, which is a software company where we're building applications on top of HubSpot. We have a handful in the mix today. And then HubSpot put an investment into that business, which we announced a couple months ago.
Oh, nice.
Congrats, man.
Congrats.
From the HubSpot Ventures side. So we're doing all stuff HubSpot, and my background pre-HubSpot was deep in the Salesforce and sort of other ecosystems as well. So I'm not as much as I'm a big HubSpot advocate, my most technical skill set to this day is still on the Salesforce side.
Nice.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
There you go.
Nice. That's cool. Yeah. And so you're not, because I hate the Salesforce versus HubSpot thing. Like, use the one that's right for you.
I agree. Yeah.
People want to like die on those hills. And it's like, why? There's they're both great products. They don't have to they're not mutually exclusive. Cool. Okay. So then today we went through, I feel like I have to give like a bit of backstory how we landed here.
Sure.
So Connor and I were pinging back and forth, and we were trying to figure out what are we going to talk about. And then Anna messaged me and said we should talk about attribution, and I said sure. And then Connor said no, which I was very grateful for because usually I mix that.
You're always avoiding attribution.
No, I didn't. Connor can back me up.
My answer on attribution is I was like, we can talk about attribution, but my answer on attribution is not real.
It's not real. And this is why it would be really problematic because my answer is very similar, like screw attribution. So it would be a really hard episode is what I'm saying.
Well, actually, my answer wouldn't be that different either, but I think there's some use in it.
Well,
we're not going to talk about it. I think my inbound talk, which I have to finish writing, is on attribution. So if you're in Boston, I'll tell you all about my strong opinions.
Yeah.
All right, on how that goes, maybe we'll have you back.
Yeah. So then we were pinging back and forth, like, what are we going to talk about? And Connor was like, we should talk about Commerce-Powered CRM. And internally I went, what the hell is Commerce-Powered CRM? and externally I said, yeah, sounds great. Let's just do that because I have no idea what it is. And then because I'm a really responsible podcast host and everybody knows this, I did exactly 0 minutes of research on what Commerce-Powered CRM is. So Connor, I want to talk about it because I'm very interested. I want to learn things about it, but you want to be you're teaching a 4-year-old right now. Tell us about Commerce-Powered CRM.
Yeah. Absolutely. So when we think about that, and it's something we're actually talking a bunch about these days, but traditionally, CRM platforms, right? You have your sales team in there, your marketing team may be in there, your service team in there. You have all sort of interactions and data points on customer pieces, but usually for organizations, their commerce data, which is sort of like who's paying us, how much have they paid us, when's the last time that they paid us, and some of those pieces is outside of CRM entirely. And so what a lot of organizations do is they try to figure out a way of let's have this deal value and we'll put that in there. We'll have TCV and ACV or whatever else on our CRM reporting. But then you go ask the CFO and they have completely different metrics and completely different numbers, and everyone gets really frustrated. And so when we think about commerce-powered CRM, as it's how can you get all of that commerce data into your core CRM infrastructure and combine it so you can do cool and interesting things like have the same numbers that your finance team has on how your customers are performing and everything else. But then you can start using a lot of that data to both put it in front of your sellers and your CSMs and your success and your support people. You can use it to route and control and manage a lot of your different communications or a lot of your different engagement streams. And you can do lots of cool and interesting things with all of that information. And so commerce-powered CRM is sort of the unification of how do I get all of my commerce data on who are my customers, how much do they pay me, how do they pay me, when do they pay me, and get all of that into your core CRM infrastructure so that you can do lots of cool and interesting ops stuff with that data.
So is it mainly for B2B or B2C? I mean, like
that was my question, actually.
Yeah, not at all. No. So when we think about this, so we have sort of two use cases we run into most frequently that we can give you as an example. So one is like ERP, right? So lots of people use NetSuite, or maybe you use sort of Sage, Dynamics, all these different pieces. And usually organizations have both who is my customer, which products have they purchased, and it's especially think of like consumption driven businesses. So a simple example for that is you're a manufacturer, you produce some type of product, a consumable, medical technology, med tech stuff, anything where you have kind of this ordering mechanic. Who is my customer? When's the last time they ordered? What did they order? How much of it did they order? All of that really powers the sales and marketing workflows that I want to deploy against this customer to say, they normally order this many vials. We have a new product. They have a service line that aligns to this product. We should sell them this thing, and let's kick off sales and marketing actions against that customer. But that same philosophy can be applied to even something sort of as traditional as like a B2B SaaS organization, which is how much is this customer paying? What product lines do they have activated? Do we have additional products we could be selling them? And sophisticated organizations are typically getting that connected and integrated back in, and you can do lots of really cool, interesting things with it.
So a mix between like inventory management, CRM automation, payment processing.
Think about it less as inventory and more of what is this customer buying? So not necessarily how many of these things do we have to sell, but what are they buying from us? How much of it have they purchased? When's the last time that they purchased it? And having it and being able to store all of that.
So, and I'm just trying to like play this out because this sounds really cool. And I've done some of this with like ERP, right? Like NetSuite back into Salesforce that sellers can see. It's like directionally what we're talking about. Although I think you're talking about a much more advanced version of that than like just putting the billing data back into Salesforce, which is helpful in a lot of ways just in itself. But when you're thinking about it in terms of you can start to trend, customers are buying this, are also buying this, and therefore we should use marketing, assets to go after people who bought this with this ad specifically, and we should have sellers go after these folks because they've been purchasing this, and like you can basically start to model that sort of targeting out to you top of funnel. Is that what we're talking about?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So think about the common use case that I'm
so much better at this than Brandon. I'm already so much
I know. Look at that. Yeah, sure.
It's not even close.
Like, I get it. I'm ready to sell it. Let's rock and roll.
Yeah, he's a pro already. Yeah.
The example I'll give, right? So I'll do a plug on a Happily product, but only because it's relevant. So one of the Happily products we have is Zebra, which is a Stripe integration. So we basically take the whole Stripe data model, we take all of your Stripe data, we push it into your HubSpot CRM, we rebuild all the stuff. We have subscription objects, transaction objects, like live syncing between the two things. And what happens is your CRM infrastructure. So it's not just about having the data there. It's about how you can start to use CRM functionality on top of that data. So we have a Zebra customer who they've moved which like this isn't something we intended, but like they've moved their entire accounts receivable, recognition, follow-ups, following up on overdue customers. They've moved all of that into HubSpot because they just built a dashboard on like, what are all my Stripe invoices? When were they paid? What's overdue? Who's the customer? Do we have open deals with them?
Yeah.
And they're trying to manage it as I have sales reps that are requesting approval on quotes to these customers, and those customers haven't.
Your account management team has got to be loving that dashboard, right? Oh.
Exactly.
Okay.
And you can start to use that for your approval flows, like any of your engagement stuff, taking that commerce data and empowering your CRM with it.
You can even use it to like prioritize support tickets.
Totally.
Things like that, right? Like absolutely. Yes. Okay. All right. Well, okay.
Jordan
Brandon,
gets it. He's
are you
on
with us?
board.
Are you with us now, Brandon?
I'm with you. I'm with you.
Brandon's. I'm sorry. I just feel a little salty this afternoon. It's been a long day.
Just this afternoon.
Yeah, I know. This is a little saltier than usual. So, okay, I love this. This is awesome. So, and by the way, it's my biggest question, because I get the value of it is like basically unfathomable, because there's so many creative ways you could do things with that, right? Like basically what you're using for in a lot of ways is create more pipeline, create more revenue, however you want, because there will be triggers or indicators that show you here's people you can target for new marketing, outbound, upsells, better support, like across the board. You can use it in a lot of. We couldn't even list all the ways, and it'll change company to company. How do you know when a company is ripe for it? And what I mean by that, for the most part, is I get a lot of companies that are like, hey, we should go buy 6th Sense. And 95% of the time, I go, you're not ready to buy 6th Sense. You guys aren't even like properly handling the demand gen leads that are coming in. Like maybe we should button up like the core basics and figure out your sales process and like field leads appropriately. And then when we get there and then like actually start doing a little outbound, then we'll worry about like 6th Sense, right? And so, and I call that like ripeness. Like you're not ripe for 6th Sense yet, right? You've got to get all the way to that place. When is somebody ripe for this?
Yeah. So I think the earlier that you unify these data sets, not dissimilar from, right, like let's put our marketing data and our sales data and our service data in one place, and that's going to help us in a bunch of ways. Candidly, I think that like commerce data is really just another component of that. Like it's a piece of your customer relationship, and arguably maybe one of the most important pieces that I think in most CRM environments is totally missing. So I think earlier is better, but I think that it's a function of prioritization. So if you're really looking at this, and I think this kind of follows standard organizations as they start to really operationalize how they're doing things, which is usually it starts with sales, because sales is chaos. You have all these pieces. You got to get some ops. You got to get some pipeline. Like we can't forecast. We don't know what's going on. Let's fix that and get that in there. Once you're going to have this sales process, you might start saying, let's figure out the marketing function so that we can organize what's coming in and really route it to sales. And we're not leaving money on the table and missing stuff. And then I think organizations naturally trend over to service and they start to optimize that piece. And I think commerce really comes naturally after that. So I don't think it has to be marketing, sales, and service is perfect, and don't touch commerce until that's the case. But if you're really strapped on resources and you're like, my marketing operations infrastructure is a total disaster, like I think it's reasonable to say, let's solve that first before we start going and doing commerce. But I think it naturally extends, because the power of the commerce-powered CRM infrastructure is really going to be unlocked by what you do on your sales ops and your marketing ops and your service ops and the whole rev ops piece.
That makes a ton of sense.
You're just creating noise.
Well, you're not going to have, if you don't have good marketing ops and good sales ops and process on those two things, you're going to have a lot of commerce data anyway. This is my guess. So
right, exactly.
You got to sell some things to generate that commerce data.
Yeah. What a nice problem to have.
Yeah. Like I've got too much commerce data. Like, oh well, oh no, poor you. Okay, that makes sense. Like I think I was thinking about that wrong, because I was thinking about it more comparably to like 6th Sense, but the core premise behind me in those situations saying, no, you're not ready for 6th Sense is you're not ready to spend $100,000 on that yet, right? It's a huge investment. You're not going to use it. It's a waste of money right now. Might be good in 2 years.
I think you're also seeing like Salesforce and Stripe, right? Like Stripe just really enhanced their Salesforce integration and is pushing a lot more stuff over to Salesforce and these other pieces. HubSpot has sort of payments, and they're trying to push and expand into that. And I think HubSpot payments is much more of an SMB type of play. But the reality is I think they're really looking at it as like they're evaluating their customer base and saying these customers are trying to digitize portions of their business. And one of the on-ramps that these prospects could theoretically have to us is, I need to get paid online. I need to charge somebody for a meeting. I need to send somebody an invoice. Like, how can I do that? And HubSpot's like, oh, we have payments. And so they come on to HubSpot's universe, kind of the same way that if you think about like Intuit and MailChimp and sort of what they're building on the SMB structure, I think you have the same concept, which is digitizing payments is a natural on-ramp for CRM companies. And as they're starting to look at doing more of those pieces. And I think similarly, we'll see it at the higher end of the market, where larger organizations are saying, this is a section that we haven't successfully digitized, and we really want to empower our go-to-market teams with this data. And we think that they can do cool things with it. And obviously it's a lot harder when you're a lot more complex and you have
Yeah.
multiple Stripe accounts and ERPs in multiple countries and
50,000 SKUs in multiple countries and multiple currencies.
And none of my, I have 3 SKUs, but I actually have 50 of them represented here because we changed it so many times and everyone's on legacy plans. And like, you know, if you've ever been through a Zora implementation, like it's that.
I mean, any CPQ in history, like I've only ever heard mythical tales of like good CPQ. Like that's just like people like, oh, this one company I was at 8 years ago, it was great. No, yeah, it probably wasn't. You got rose-colored glasses 8 years later.
You didn't know what you didn't know back then.
Yeah, it was great in
It seemed
2015.
nice.
Yeah, felt really good back then, didn't it? Okay, all right. So so I think I'm clear on what it is. I can see why it's important. And so my next question, and when to implement it, that's a really it's a really interesting topic, and also I love the idea of just getting it in anyways because it doesn't have to be linear, right? Like if that data is in there, you might use it earlier rather than later. Just put it in there, and then you might not use it for a while, and then you'll use it again. Like making the data available is going to make your whole revenue organization more streamlined and efficient and powerful because you'll get good marketers like Brandon will figure out how to use it for product marketing and all sorts of things. And so my next question, how do you actually do this? Because you're talking in theory a whole lot, but is there a tool that you use? And by the way, I never ask that question because I hate pitching tools on here. So is there a tool that you use? I think there's a handful. Through direct integrations or like how do you do it?
Well, also who's responsible for it?
Yeah, that's also a good question. Who and how? Who, how, why, what, where?
Who, how, why, what?
Who has everything here?
Just give me the things.
So I think in terms of, we can do how first, and then we can do maybe like who. I think how depends on level of maturity, right? So if you're a very mature organization, maybe you already have some data warehousing stuff and you're already like piping up, like what we see in a lot of organizations with high degrees of sophistication. Maybe they have a data team, the finance or product organization has put some of this together. They're like, oh yeah, we have a data warehouse. I send all my product data there. I kick all my data from NetSuite there and I like query on top of it. And that's how our CFO like gets reports for our board. Reverse ETL, like magical problem, right? You're like, oh, you have this data and it's in a data warehouse. You can go connect something like High Touch really easily to that. You can pipe it back to your CRM really easily. Snowflake is sort of the source. You set the destination as Salesforce, HubSpot, CRM of your choice. You pipe it down. If you already have that data in a really accessible place, that's probably the right solution. If you don't have that in place or you need a higher level of functional utilization of that data, you probably want to get like a connector that is designed to not just pass the data, but sort of make it accessible on the other side. So in the Salesforce universe, there's a company called Blackthorn. They have a payments product, connects to Stripe, install it into Salesforce, puts all your Salesforce data there. And what's cool about that is not just the sync piece. You can actually empower sort of people in Salesforce to edit and augment and upgrade and downgrade all of their Stripe data right from Salesforce. Zebra is the same concept in the HubSpot universe. And then if you're going to ERPs, there's a bunch of these sort of purpose-built ERP to CRM connectors. And that's if you sort of need more functionality.
And you need a consultant for those. Let me just say that out loud because you should not do the NetSuite to CRM yourself. You just shouldn't. Just don't do it. Don't do it.
Just paste your API key.
Don't try it. Don't be like, yeah, this guy's tech savvy. He can do it. Nope. Hire a consultant. I can just tell you. Don't make that mistake.
I would agree with that. We can help you. Give me a call. We'll not do too much plugging, but we do a lot of these. But I think to your point, right? Like these can get really complicated and messy. And then I think that the other middle ground is iPaaS level infrastructure. So I usually don't like people doing full like iPaaS platforms for one specific use case. But if you have a lot of these we have a bunch of disparate systems, we need to integrate and orchestrate them all. How can we do that? Like things like Syncery and sort of products in that arena are really good at that kind of stuff. And I think you can start setting a lot of that up. So I think it kind of depends on what's your level of infrastructure, what do you have today, and what's going to make the most sense. But it's totally a solvable problem that I think that dovetails really nicely into who. Like my argument is usually the RevOps folks. And the reason for that is if you give this, and you might need support from like IT or data or some of these other people.
Whoever, in the instance where it's like a data warehouse, there's probably a data scientist that's been managing that and they'll partner with RevOps.
Someone has it and they're like, what tables do I need? And they're going to be like, oh, well, it's kind of over here and kind of over here. And like, I extrapolate it this way. Like ask that guy, like, they'll be like, I need a table with these fields. And he'll be like, oh, okay, I'll get you one of those.
Yeah.
No problem.
Find the guy with the glasses. He'll do it.
I think that the reason that I think that RevOps makes a lot of sense for that is that ultimately it's not just, if all you do is integrate it and pipe the data in, like who cares? You really need to make it functionally useful for both your automation infrastructure, your CS users, your sales users. And like, I think that the RevOps team is usually the folks that sort of have a mind of like, where can we leverage this and how can we put it into the right place and how can we operationalize it versus just sync it? Because if you just pipe in every transaction that exists into a transaction table and you're just like, look, like I have all my transactions in CRM, like I did it, we won.
Yeah, congrats.
Like, congrats.
High five,
like you're like,
everybody.
what do I do with this? And
Yeah.
and I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I mean that's the same question, right? And I think a lot of companies struggle with that. Well, it's not the same. It's the next question because I'm thinking of it in like like watching RevOps over the past 10 years. It's now all of a sudden sales and like sales used to have the data, marketing had the data, CS had their data. And then we went to like sales, marketing, and CS all should look at the same data as each other. And that's like a good idea, right? Like general direction, we're all like, yeah, great, high five everybody, that's cool. And then, that was sort of happening. And then we kind of got to this phase, I think this is probably a couple of years ago, where it was like, you know what, sales, marketing, and CS should also get product usage data into their stuff, right? And like that would be really helpful. And I think that one it's awesome. Like I think it's really powerful, but I still think people are still kind of like, great, what do I do with it? Like they haven't totally actioned it in all the ways that it can be actioned. And my guess is this is kind of in a similar boat where it's like, yeah, we should have all that in there, but then people are like, wait, what do we do with it? We just kind of.
I think that's really like honestly. That's an awesome comparison because I think that what happens is it's kind of like ops ends up being this in-between layer of like, we have all this data, we can do all these things, but how do we make that usable and actionable? And like, I think not dissimilar from product data, right? Like piping to a sales rep of like, this is your target account and like, look at all these things that they're doing in our product. And they're like, I don't like, what? I don't really know.
Great.
Like, do I get it? Like,
this is me.
Hide tab. Like I just don't like that seems like a lot. And I think if you have like the RevOps infrastructure on top to be like, oh cool, how can I take that data, sort of create some degree of buying intent out of it and like surface an opportunity for a rep that's like, hey, you should go talk to them about, insert SKU here because of these reasons. And the rep's like, oh, this is awesome. Like I can do stuff with this. This is actionable. And I think that putting that ops layer in between makes sure that what you end up getting out of that data becomes useful.
Well, and I think that's I love where you're going with this because I think that's the way. When I did this with product data, actually the company Brandon and I worked at together. We did like the piping of product usage data into Salesforce for the reps, and the way we sort of did that on our backside was obviously we were like managing that process, but when we got a kind of list of here's all the potential data points we could get out of the product into Salesforce, and before we piped it in, we went to the head of sales with the list and said, here's the list of things we could do. Spend a week, brainstorm all the ways you might want to use this, right? And then come back to us and tell us how you want to use it, because that's going to inform how we pipe the data in, how we present it, how we deliver it.
Totally.
I need to understand how you're going to use it. And as an ops guy, I can guess, but I'm not going to guess right. Go to the salesperson, go to the marketing person, ask them, if I could get you this, how would you want to use it? Because it's going to inform how you do that. And then it'll actually be actionable and it'll be much better.
Totally. I honestly, I think that what you just described to me is sort of the foundational element of those pieces where it's no different than product management. If you're like, what do you actually want? Yeah. Like what's supposed to happen on the other side?
What do you want? What do you want to get out of this? Yeah.
But I don't think that question gets asked.
Oh, otherwise I wouldn't say it out loud. I think you're exactly right. I think oftentimes we're moving fast and we make assumptions and we're like, you know what? Of course they want that delivered this way and on this object in this place. Maybe they don't. Maybe they want to use it somewhere else. Maybe it's more important somewhere else, right? Because there's like workflow components of it. There's understanding and comprehension. And that leads into the next question, which is adoption. Like, what does adoption of doing this look like? And I'm assuming when you do this for people you work with, you take it all the way through like enablement?
Yeah. So when we, and I'll speak about this both from like, we do a lot of this work for organizations and like, I'm on different ERPs. I've got NetSuite. I've got whatever's going on. Right. And so we do that on the services side. And then not dissimilarly on the Happily side with Zebra, sort of the app that's in the mix, right? It's like, we see that for a lot of different customers. I think in both of those situations, the enablement, what does it actually manifest into is, okay, we have all this data and it's here. So I think the first thing that we really see immediate, like, wow, this is awesome, is all of a sudden sales and marketing and finance like have the same revenue number. and that alone goes a really, really long way, because more often than not,
board reporting is just good now. Like that is fundamentally changed board reporting. Yeah.
Totally. And instead you're just like, a couple minutes ago, like your VP of sales got up here and told me that you had this number, and like you have a different number in your slide. Like, what's the right number? And like the CEO just dies inside. Like,
yeah. But then even your attribution number is the same as marketing. I mean, even though attribution is trash, like your numbers are the same. It's
gotta be aligned.
Yeah, and I think like, so that I think that the reporting alignment is one piece. I think the secondary piece is like, how can we start deploying this into, I think marketing workflows is huge, right? Like we can be engaging people and marketing to them on ancillary and connected offerings. I can't tell you how often like the core problem that we run into for marketers abound is they're like, I just want to like create this segment of customers of product X that don't have product Y, but like, and have come to a marketing event in the last 12 months. And that's like, you know, it's like the crazy stringing together of like different data sets to try to get something to work. And so I think you solve a lot of that problem. And then I think the deployment down to CS is when you immediately latch onto, right? Like how I can automatically drive all of my renewal and expansion and like all of those pieces, because I'm not pulling a list every month from, you know, whatever system to say, oh, this is their last close date. But then we go in and we exclude all the people who happen to actually buy this thing and don't call those people because they're in an open conversation for an expansion or they're escalating and negotiating.
Because it all exists in one place, so you can see.
It's all in one place. So now I just know, and I'm powering that and driving, you know, the right folks to engage with the right people with the right data at the right time.
The RevOps motto.
The RevOps mantra,
so,
right?
Because as you're saying this, the last thing I'm thinking of, and then unless I'll give room for Brandon to ask questions because he might have some, but I'm assuming, like, because where I'm going with this, and this is, I think, the biggest pain point for most sales reps at a lot of companies, is you could use this to create, like, directionally pretty good transparency in expected commissions because you have all the commerce data in your CRM. So you could do a lot with that. Cool. So which sales reps would love to be able to see their commissioning in Salesforce, wouldn't they? Like,
absolutely. And you have like, oh yeah, it'll be this. Like, this is the answer. Only commission models were so simple.
Well, I mean, but like they should be. Personally, I've written a lot. Sure. I mean, as a lawyer, I've written a lot of comp plans because that's the lawyer plus RevOps is the first thing they ask you to do. Like, can you write a comp plan?
Like, oh wow, this is great.
Yeah, this is perfect. Covers both bases. But comp plans should be simple. They should be definitely simple enough that I can pump them into a couple of formula fields and give you a directionally right answer.
I've seen too many where we're like, yeah, it is that way, but like not for this product. And these, it's like the same as CPQ.
Right. It just gets too complicated. But like theoretically, as long as you have a good commission plan, you could do something like that.
So what we're doing right now that's super interesting, that's like a really good example of this that we didn't even really plan on doing, but with Happily, we're launching kind of this whole like partner program going after HubSpot partners and saying, hey, we have all these apps that you can just sell them and distribute them to your existing customers. And like, that's becoming a channel, and we're paying sort of 20% on a subscription, like standard sort of like affiliate model stuff. Right. But what's interesting is because every transaction that actually a partner originates comes into our CRM from Stripe via Zebra. So we like have every single one. We can actually relate all those to the partner, have all of the transactions that all of their affiliate customers have driven connected to their company record, and then using CMS Hub on HubSpot, build them a portal, all HubSpot native, that they can log into that shows them, here's all the transactions, here's your percentage payout of the transactions, here's the next date. And we're embedding a Stripe Express link that they can just click, and then it like auto enriches everything. And that's just all built on top of CRM. Like, we don't have to go buy partner stack and wire all this stuff up. Like, it's just straight on top of the CRM system.
Nice. That's awesome. I mean, this has been CRM. Like Commerce-Powered CRM. That's the first time I've ever heard the phrase. So I was
the same.
Yeah. Like, I don't think it'll be the last time. Although I think some branding teams might get a hold of it and change the.
You're going to have somebody like,
Marketers doing what they
raises
do.
$5 million to build commerce-powered CRM for
Right.
enterprise.
Yeah.
Did it
And then
6
and
weeks.
CPCRM is just too long, so we gotta like figure out how to like clean that up a little bit. It's 5
Yeah,
letters.
you know
is
an
too much,
acronym's
man.
coming. Yeah.
Yeah, CPCRM,
exactly.
Commerce-Powered
CPCRM.
CRM, CPCRM. Nailed it. We just put a little copyright on that trademark. You know.
You
All right.
heard it here first.
Anything else, or I got to segue us? What do you got?
Well, we kind of were touching on it a little bit here, but like there's so many different ways that I think you could measure commerce-powered CRM, right? So there's sales performance. You could probably do retention. You could probably do satisfaction, efficiency. Well, what are the main KPIs that you're using to measure commerce-powered CRM?
Like, and is this working, or like,
exactly.
Is it working? Is it being used, adopted, that sort of stuff? Yeah. Great question.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that I don't jump. I think the basics would probably be how much reporting do we have that's built on top of this stuff is probably a good first pass. And then like, do people access that reporting, right? It's the secondary thing. Like, here's this dashboard, but it hasn't been accessed.
Actually, like
in
internal
days.
usage here. Like, are you guys using this stuff that we just built you?
Yeah, we made it for you, but do you care? And no, like, oh, sad.
That's never happened before.
I think that there's sort of the usage piece. I think the secondary piece is kind of the automation engine as well. I think the other thing that we do a lot that we think about for internal RevOps teams is like, RevOps should be doing NPS with the org, like for
absolutely.
How are you getting things? Is this helping? Like, what's going on?
So important.
And like pacing against that. And if you can just ask like, how is this of value to you? And sales reps they'll give you a no. They'll be like, no, this gets in my way all the time. And so I think that that's kind of another driver of that, where in ops projects, right, you can sort of measure like, did the other one that I talked about this in like a RevOps bootcamp thing. I think it applies generally to kind of all ops projects as well, which is like, before you build or deploy something, like decide on a metric, like at that moment, right? Before you get it live, like what's a metric that this is actually going to influence, and let's benchmark where
have a hypothesis and benchmark it.
Test it. Yes. Hypothesis, benchmark. Did it move? Like iterate. Like that's like, this is the way.
You know, one of the things that I've been playing with a couple of companies actually, and this is like an interesting thing to layer into it, is it's like attribution within attribution almost. But the idea that when marketing says I want to run it, but it does sound terrible. I don't know how to. It's Inception, whatever. But if marketing comes to you and says I want, because this is very frequent, like marketing ops people, like the marketing team will come and say, hey, we want to run a campaign to all the people that were closed lost deals in the past 6 months, and here's what we're going to do, right? And you run these campaigns very specifically. Same with outbound and sales. They'll say, hey, we want to run an outbound effort we're going to target these folks. Is actually, you know, like you track those campaigns and the success of those campaigns and all that is happening. But one thing you don't really track is what is the source of that campaign, meaning the data source. So is the data source sales data? Is it marketing data? So like if marketing says we want to run a campaign to all the closed loss, that's sales data that we're using in a marketing campaign. And product usage data being in that list as well. Like, are we tracking the source of the data for that informed that campaign? Because from a RevOps standpoint, for me, that is a really helpful thing for me to know. What is proving to be most and least valuable in terms of data that we're connecting for everybody, right? It helps me sort of map that. So if I look at the end of the year and I go, we ran 96 marketing campaigns and 92 of them were based on product usage data. Great. Like I'm going to turn down any request for sales data next year. Like it's just not a priority. Product usage data is what is fundamental for us, right? Or the inverse. But like just as an example, starting to track attribution within attribution is not the right phrase, but like, yeah.
No, I like that. I love the concept. I really, really love the concept.
Commerce-powered CRM data would be, you know, on the list is what I'm saying. It would be. Yeah. Like, are we using, and then you could see what are we using and not using. And it would also identify gaps, right? Because then you could look at a dashboard basically that says, here's what we're using and not using. Like, we're not using commerce data. We have all this wonderful data.
That sounds
like marketing.
really hard to track and manage.
I don't think it'd be that hard. I'm thinking real simple, like a pick list. Honestly, like just like we
run this campaign. Which things do we do in it?
You make a campaign, you got to pick it. Like that's it. Like because I don't need it to be deeper than that necessarily. Okay. Maybe I do ultimately, but yeah, I'm playing with it. So, anyways, I'll let
I feel like I need a shirt that's like it'll just be a pick list.
It'll just be a pick list. What do you mean? Like, I'm not Yeah, I'm not reinventing the wheel, but anyways, okay. And
Jordan
I'm
loves
gonna
his pick
segue.
lists.
I do love a pick, dude. As
Yeah.
long as it's not as long as it's not multi-select. Like, don't. Let's be clear
Yeah,
about
no,
this.
the worst.
It's
The
gotta
worst.
be just
The worst.
Yeah, like,
It
why?
is a
Why would
great
you make
idea,
a
and you're like, it's the worst of all worlds. It's horrible.
yeah,
I
like
hate
just give me like free text is somehow not as bad as a multi-select pick list.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So then I have to segue us to This Week on LinkedIn, which is, of course, when we answer questions from people who send us questions on LinkedIn. I got 4 questions today from actually 2 people. So I'm going to read one of those that I have not read yet. So we will find out what we
We'll
get.
see how it is.
They're usually really good in defense of that. And this guy sent one before, and his other one was very good. So the question is, AI is game changing, but I think a lot of ops and sales teams are struggling to find the right use cases for adoption. Can you give 1 or 2 tangible examples of how your teams may have implemented AI in a value add way? Okay.
This is great.
Yeah,
So first off, I'm like, we could have just talked about it. I'm like totally obsessed.
Are you?
Heck
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
This is a good
At our last
question.
all hands, I was literally like, everyone needs to find a way to use ChatGPT in their
There we
job, and if
go.
you're not, you're toast. Like, and it's my honest. I think that not using ChatGPT in a function of your job is going to be the equivalent of like, what if somebody just didn't use Google? And like the difference
Right.
between those 2 employees is gonna like.
I mean, I've worked with a lot of
Living
people
night
who
and
don't know how to Google much. So
So I have tangible answers. I have lots of tangible answers.
Okay,
I'll give you
give us
like
one.
very,
Good one.
very opsy. That's insane. That like we did. So we are using it pretty heavily right now for assisting both our development teams as well as just like our technical consulting teams to do coding work. So in HubSpot, right, you have custom coded actions which run in a workflow very similar to Apex, and we literally used ChatGPT. So we went and said, hey, I want to push whenever a deal is marked closed won, I want to create an order in my ERP system, and not NetSuite, random ERP here. You go to the ERP, you grab the orders API page. With GPT-4, you don't even have to do this because you can just be like, read this web page, and you can just paste the link to that API documentation. This is like a real example. You paste it into ChatGPT, you hit enter, you hit submit, and it says, oh, here's what an order's like API call, create call would look like in order to interface with this. You say, wow, that's really cool. Here are some variables that I have that I want to do, and I want you to rewrite that in JavaScript so that it can run in a custom coded action in HubSpot. And it will rewrite that, put it into JavaScript, copy, paste it into a custom coded action, add an authentication token, and it runs and it works.
That's wild.
Done.
That's awesome.
Works. No problem. One example.
Yeah.
Let's go. Let's keep going.
I can riff for hours on this. I'll give you the secondary example. It's one that I did, which is, and this like worked, which is I said I'm speaking at the thing about at Inbound on marketing attribution. Yeah. And I didn't when we got the confirmation email, because like our ops admin like went and submitted all of them for us. When we got the confirmation email, I thought it was someone else on our team who submitted that topic, because I didn't write that topic. ChatGPT did. And I went for Inbound, I taught ChatGPT what the format of an inbound submission needed to look like. So like what the table was, like here are all the stages, here's the different types of sessions, and like taught it how to build the table. And then I gave it my bio, I gave it blog articles, and I was like, go fill this out with 30 different ideas in the table format, and spat them all out, copied them, put them in a Google Sheet. We uploaded that to Inbound, and that's the marketing attribution talk that I'm giving in Inbound, was one ChatGPT wrote.
That's awesome.
Jeez.
That's so sweet. I agree with you, by the way. I think the way we're like in general, you have to use it. And there's simple ways and there's very complex ways, but it's just so powerful that like not using it even simple ways is just a miss.
Next time you get stuck on a Salesforce formula, I have a junior.
It's one of my examples. I had it write me Apex code because I couldn't find an error in Apex code, and I was digging through it and finally I just pasted it, driving me nuts. Yeah. And like Apex is difficult, and I'm not an engineer, and so I pasted it in there, and it fixed it in 2 minutes. Like it was so dumb. I was so angry. I spent like 3 hours on it.
That's how it always goes.
But like that, very simple, right? And then, but like even more simple than that, one of the things that I just was talking to an SDR team about this week, they were saying, hey, we don't have enough messaging for LinkedIn. We have good email messaging and that, but the LinkedIn coaching has been like email messaging and LinkedIn messaging are very different things, because LinkedIn messaging is, I'm just trying to give you value. They don't solicit on LinkedIn. They just send value. They provide value to people, which is what they've been coached to. They don't have specific messaging into that. I was like, yeah, but guys, here's what you're going to do. By the way, the team, you as SDRs, this is what you're going to do. You've got all the marketing nurture emails, right? Grab the nurture email, put it in chat GTP, tell it to write you a LinkedIn message based on that nurture email. Because what you're doing is nurturing, and it'll
crush.
And it'll split that out, and that's your message. And I've got like 3 SDR teams doing that now. Like, cool. Like, you're having a hard time with messaging, just use it for that. Use it for these things that are like, seems like a really simple use and it's a no-brainer, but it saves so many people an hour a day, right? Like that, like use it. You can send 20 more messages, you get 1 more response, you book 1 more meeting. Like now you're moving faster, you're doing better, right?
Well, I'm using it to even train my team on what are the main pain points that my ICP cares about? How are they measured? And then and then you can actually feed it content from your own blog and say, all right, summarize this and create an effective cold email that goes out to them. I mean, my SDR team's using it all the time now, and I'm really pushing. Like, I really do think, like, people are so worried that ChatGPT is going to take over jobs.
It's just going to make us better at them, just like the internet did.
That's people who know how to use ChatGPT are going to be the ones who are taking over jobs. It's not like,
right.
At least as of right now.
There's like decades of data that show the internet created millions and millions and millions of jobs.
It's not a zero-sum game, man. Like humans make stuff. We produce things, and we all used to be subsistence farmers, and it was not great. And then
I grew up on a farm, Connor. Let's pump the brakes a little bit.
Subsistence farming specifically.
Yeah.
Hey, I hope it doesn't rain or else we all die. Like not great.
Yeah.
And I think that like over time, right? I think there's not a finite amount of human productivity, and it's going to get much better. I think where things get really crazy, honestly, and I was talking to Yamini about this earlier this week, is like specifically about like what HubSpot's doing with some of the AI stuff. Like ChatSpot, if you haven't played with it, is insane. Like you should go play with it. Like Dharmesh has been working on it, like GPT-4 on top of HubSpot. You can literally like tell it, hey, what were our top performing like products last quarter? And can you give them to me broken down by state? And it'll kick out a report that you can click on that's formatted like in HubSpot, and you can then edit it. It's insane. But I think where things get crazy is think about like support flows, and customer support ticket comes in. Here's a pre-drafted response that we think makes sense, and support agents just editing it and figuring it out. It can surface, here are all the questions that we're getting, and like we have insufficient training data because we don't know how to answer. Here are these things that someone should go figure out and write articles about, and then we can automate tier 1 support from. Like I think ultimately what happens is the experience for everyone gets better, because instead of like I have to call 3 different UPS branches today to find some package that didn't get here, and this whole thing is I'm just like, hey, can you go find my package and like reroute it to me, please?
Yeah.
Like,
but even like troubleshooting, right? So think about
totally
like, something like your TV's not working. You can start troubleshooting it online, and it'll just like take you through that process.
That's a great example, honestly. Right? That's an awesome example.
And like so easy, and like that's one that
instead of like, why doesn't my Apple TV remote increase the volume on my Sonos? Reddit.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. No. 100%. Yeah. And like that's one where I expect that to exist in like 3 months. Like I think
absolutely.
Like that stuff is around the corner.
Not
By the
even
way,
3 months. Like
right. It probably already does. Yeah. My favorite one that I did, and this is for any consultant, because this is kind of more for marketing consultants. But I had this new company I was working with about 2 weeks ago, and I got them, and I went to their website, and I was trying to like do my research and really understand the business. And I got like an hour into like researching, and I was like, I can't figure out what this company does. Like I've been like reading your website.
That's not a good
sign. Right. And then I was just like, what the heck? Like I've been reading this for like an hour. I can't figure it out. So I went and took the URL of their website, put it in ChatGPT, and said, hey, reading only this website, what does this company do? And ChatGPT came back, and just an example was like they sell apples. I was like, okay, cool, like super helpful. Like I don't need to do the rest. So I get on the call and I asked them, like, why don't you guys explain what you do? And on the call, they told me they sell oranges. And I was like,
This
wow.
is really bad.
Well, I think we might have a branding problem, right? Like, I think we've identified a pretty big gap, and like I couldn't figure it out. I asked the AI, and the AI is looking at it as, you know, like every man basically looking at your website, and it can't figure it out. Came up with the wrong conclusion. You've got missed opportunities, is what this means, right?
You're
And like,
gonna
even
get
that so simple.
That workflow is gonna get built into the page. So this is
100%. Yeah.
We didn't talk about
it'll exist. It'll exist on like Wix and Weebly. It'll be on the back end of
That's
HubSpot.
Gonna be hard.
It'll just tell you.
Hard. HubSpot CMS this is my long HubSpot. Just go by stock, and you don't have to care about any other things. Here's what happens.
we can't say that on a podcast. You can't tell people, do not listen. Connor is not a financial advisor. Do not listen to his advice. Full disclaimer.
We are not liable
I would
for
like
any
to get
decisions.
Dude, unbelievable.
Oh, no.
Come on.
Here's my point, though. Here's my point, though. So HubSpot CMS is built on the CRM product. Think about all of the data that HubSpot has about every user who's visiting every landing page of every site that HubSpot has access to. And now take your example of like we sell oranges and start combining it into the journey data that you capture upstream.
All the way through, yes.
And what happens is like the site is just going to tell you what you want to see.
Yeah.
Automatically.
Yeah.
This is not A/B testing. It's not multivariate testing. Let's not make it up.
Real-time dynamic content.
It's totally dynamic. It's just like, oh, you're looking for a solution for how do I integrate NetSuite to Salesforce?
And here's your preferred lingo, and here's all this
and here's
stuff.
The site of like, and I'm not like, oh, well, I visit this thing, and you're an integrator, and you have a for CFOs page. Like, let me go hover over that. It's just like
there's a whole
welcome. What's up? You're a CFO. You want to integrate NetSuite to Salesforce?
There's a whole debate about. There's a whole debate that we could have about the amount of data that is required on each person in the world to be able to do that, that is absolutely stored out there and discoverable and findable, and we have volunteered it through social media forever. so like it is, we have only ourselves to blame the ethical conundrum we've created here. But no, that's awesome, and I totally agree.
You want it to be. That's the future.
Oh no, yeah, like, and I would rather have that anyways. Like, let's be honest, let's make it easier. Like, I don't need to spend 20 minutes trying to find out what your company does. Just tell me what it does. Right?
Just tell me. Come on.
That's why I went to your website to begin with. Like, that's like solved my problem for me.
Yeah.
All right. We are out of time. Connor, it's been awesome. Thank you, everybody, for joining in. Give us 5 stars. Give us a follow wherever you listen to your podcast. You can follow people on Spotify and Apple now. Give us 5 stars. Spotify keeps upping their game on those things. Follow us on LinkedIn. Yeah, send us your questions. Go to our website, ogopspod.com. There's some memes there, as well as a blog and some other things. I don't know what else is there. And then we have an Instagram with also memes. It's at Update the CRM. It's my favorite username of all time. And yeah, and that's it. Send us your questions. Connor, thank you so much. This was awesome.
Thanks, Connor.
Thank you for having me. It was a blast.
Heck yeah.
We'll see everybody next week.